Test, test, test.
Right where you are. Excuse me. So I'm going to ask you all to please take your seats again. We want to get started in just a moment. If you'll take your seats, join us back in the auditorium area, that would be fantastic. If you have a conversation you want to continue, I'd invite you to take that conversation to the back halls or even down to our courtyard. And we'll get started again in just a moment or two. No, that's not working. So I'm going to ask you to please take your seats again. We want to get started. And we have fantastic panelists, and out of respect for them and their time and for you and your time, we want to keep as close to on schedule as possible. So those of you who are standing in the back, I'm going to invite you to come and take a seat. Those of you who are standing on the side, same thing. And I know the room will fill up as we go, as it gets much more interesting than just me pattering at the moment. So this next segment really had its genesis a couple of months ago. In fact, this whole conference kind of grew out of it when NestGSV with Hertz hosted a hackathon. And for a weekend, we brought together, there were 700 or so engineers who worked on the applications about what would a connected vehicle do, what capabilities might it have, how could a connected vehicle actually transform the nature of a business from a rental car company that we're all familiar with to something new and different and innovative. And that's certainly the question that Hertz is working on. We were fortunate to have those teams here with us over the weekend. We had 4 or 5 winning teams, and all of those are now going to move into an accelerator program. And I tell you that for 2 reasons. One, the more I talk, perhaps the more people will get their attention and come and join me here. in the auditorium. And two, because that's really the nature of how NestGSV looks at innovation and looks at this place as a platform and an innovation center. We like to look at big ideas, big hard problems, like what would or how would a company like Hertz transform itself using technology, do a deep dive with a bunch of really smart people trying to tackle that challenge, and then come together in an event like NestCON to really share that learning and understanding and share that with our broader community. And then from there, take those best ideas and help to seed them to become great new companies. And so that is our challenge, and that's really the genesis of this program that we're here seeing today. So thank you very much for either being so tired of hearing me talk that you just complied and sat down, or I put you to sleep, I'm not sure, but I think you will want to be, you have your best attention back, because this next section I think is extraordinarily interesting, especially as we think about what the connected vehicle means in terms even of some of the things we just heard about in the connected body, the self-driving car, all of those kinds of things start to come together, and you see how we'll be weaving these threads throughout the program. So just as in the last panel, we have a group of really smart entrepreneurs who are building terrific businesses in this space. We're doing a lot of great thinking in this space. And I'm going to invite each one to come to the stage to introduce themselves a bit so you can learn about their companies and have some context then to take to the rest of the conversation. We're going to start with William Santana-Lee, who is the CEO of NestCON. William, and I'm going to remind all of our panelists again that those of you who are great with karaoke are going to be heard the best. So you want to bring that mic right up there.
Rock and roll with that one. My name is Bill Lee. I'm the CEO of NestCON, here to talk to you about autonomous data machines. I'll let that sink in for a minute. This is a mashup of autonomous technology, big data, and robotics. So what's the problem? A vast portion of the offline world is not actually digitally connected to the online world. And the true potential of big data and business intelligence is a bit compromised. So billions of dollars are spent every year by businesses and governments trying to have the best, latest information to make critical near-term decisions or long-term strategic decisions. So you can't actually analyze data you don't have. But what if we could take the best of Silicon Valley? Imagine taking autonomous technology, robotics, software, sensors, and integrating it and come up with a set of machines that can better connect the world. So this is our solution. Autonomous robots with integrated sensor payloads that are connected into a network operations center. So autonomous technology, I believe, is going to dramatically change a lot of industries. And this is basically the end of the auto industry as you know it. This will change everything. Design, engineering, service, the concept of insurance. But the path to commercialize the technology is, let's just say, a little bit blurry. And we have a very unique path to commercialize that technology very quickly. And so the idea is to come up with these autonomous robots that have a number of payload sensors on them, either imaging, microphones, audio, proximity, air quality, and have that data fed into a network operations center that can do all the business intelligence, behavioral analysis, 3D mapping, license plate recognition, and feed that data to a number of different types of customers. Our core technologies focus on three particular facets. One is the machine operating system to get these autonomous units to roam around. A sensor operating system, a kind of a middleware layer to tie that all in, and that all get fed into a network operations center. So where could you use this? One of our beta customers is actually a prominent government organization here in Silicon Valley. They've asked us to look at some security issues that they might have. But 700,000 construction firms wanting to monitor progress, or a mapping company, their refresh rates aren't all that great on some of their maps that they have, or even monitoring it at farms or large pipelines. So the business model is also just as innovative. We're going to offer this on a machine-as-a-service basis, recover the variable cost of the unit in the first year, and then build a very nice annuity for the balance of the second through fifth year. And the idea here is to have big focus on long-term machine durability and then monetize that data. We think we can put out about 1,000 of these a year over the next few years and build ourselves a nice sizable company. And we've got about half a dozen very large global companies interested on a small beta that we're going to start at the end of this year. And if your large business organization or government agency would be interested, you can sign up for a beta test at nightscope.com. Thank you.
Clicker, and you take the chair. Great. Excellent. Our next presenter is a passionate entrepreneur and interested in how all of this technology is going to affect the connected vehicle. Please welcome Jay Girard at Mogio.
Hi, I'm Jay Girard, founder and CEO for Mogio. And Mogio is a device that connects your car to the internet. It allows your car's computer to stream its data live in real time to the Mogio cloud, where developers can write apps for your car. We've been doing this since the summer of 2012, and today at 5 o'clock we have a presentation for you to check out. You can get a presentation of our SDK and learn how to use our developer tools to write apps for any car after 1995. If you've ever brought your car into a service garage to have it diagnosed, the mechanic often plugs in what's called a diagnostic reader just under the steering column, and then they read that data and you can't see it and you don't actually know what's wrong with your car, and they do, and then they charge you some inordinate bill for your repairs because you don't have access to the data of your car. So there's 20,000 codes inside this car streaming all the time that Mogio now makes available to developers to write apps for you. So in the world of, we're reinventing driving around your smartphone so that you can stay connected to your favorite people, places, and things. Now that gives you a real-time experience with your transient environment as you go about your daily life. Is this around here? Look at that. This one. I'll do this one here. So now this is a wireframe of one of our apps, so we're giving you a little live presentation here. You can know how's your car and be notified if you need a timing belt or oil or washer fluid in real time as you pass those areas, and actually can pick up what you need without going past that service garage or that gas station or what have you. You can keep track of your teenage drivers. So anybody here with young drivers, you're a little bit nervous about how they're going to borrow your car on weekends, you can set speed or distance and know exactly where they're going, how far they're going, how fast they're going, and be notified on your smartphone the moment they exceed that. You can stay connected with your friends and family, so you can now get a spontaneous opportunity to meet up with friends as you're driving around your daily life, commuting to and from work, or meeting people at for coffee. You know how you're driving because we're going to assign driver points. That gives you the opportunity to connect with insurance providers, for example. So there's a lot of usage-based insurance coming to market now, and finally you'll have the opportunity to score your own driving and then use that driving score to go and get the best rates based on your proper driving behavior. How's your mileage? So are you spending a third or a quarter or a fifth of all your driving in idle time? It's an amazing amount of money that people spend in idling. You'll now have that information to automate your mileage tracking. If you're a consultant and you have multiple clients, you don't have to write that down in a book. There's a plethora of opportunities that first we're making available with our own apps like this one, connecting to your SmartThings enabled home, for example, using your car as a trigger to put your house into power save mode as you leave the driveway every morning. So we're making it possible for the Mogio data to stream from your car and let developers write apps for any car since 1996. So what's driving the Mogio experience? It's a cellular chip, so inside every device is a 4G cellular connection, so you have a real-time 24/7 connection to your car. With Bluetooth 4.0, Mogio will sense your presence. So as you get into and out of your car, your partner's car, a rental car that's enabled Mogio, the apps that you enjoy will move with you in and out of any Mogio-enabled car. So it's not like OnStar for cars or Mercedes Embrace. This works on any car since 1996, and now you can bring your app-connected car experience to any car that you drive with Mogio in it. Mogio, of course, is computer-connected, so you can see that data and be able to leverage it for any kind of apps that you've accessed off the Mogio cloud. GPS allows you to interact in real time with your environment, again, using Mogio as a trigger to automate many of your everyday driving tasks. And with an accelerometer, Mogio effectively gives your car its own awareness. So if it gets bumped in a parking lot, is it being towed as it gets picked up from a tow truck? Mogio now has the ability to let you know immediately on your phone the moment anybody's tampering with your car, smashing a window, towing it, you name it. So really, the possibilities are endless. We're creating an ecosystem where developers can write apps for your car that you can access, and the automotive ecosystem can provide services to you that make your connected car life a lot more seamless and a lot more intuitive. So we'll talk a little bit more about this on the panel. Thank you for your attention.
Excellent, thank you. And our third speaker on this panel is bringing together the first electric car sharing or vehicle sharing network. Please welcome Michael Keating, founder of Scoot.
Everybody hear that? $5 electric scooters in San Francisco. Kind of crazy, but also surprisingly practical. If you live or work in San Francisco, you're familiar with a really annoying daily trade-off, which is you can either go someplace affordably and slowly, like on the bus, or I can get someplace quickly and pay a lot for it by taking a taxi. Nice thing about Scoot is we are about as fast as a taxi and about as affordable as mass transit. And that means that we can be really useful for a lot of trips that people take in the city. So we have this technology that we put inside the scooters, and you dock your own smartphone in the scooter to activate it and to choose your destination. And then your smartphone is also your dashboard, GPS, speedometer, battery meter while you're riding. To give you a sense of what this is like, I thought I would give you a quick taste of a day in the life of Scoot 47. Scoot 47 works for a startup and doesn't get up before 8 a.m., but Jeff woke Scoot 47 up at 8 a.m. the other morning in our downtown garage and rode it to Caltrain. I guess I have a laser point, right? So Scoot 47 started over there and went down to Caltrain, and Jeff got on Caltrain and went to work and left Scoot 47 at the Caltrain, and then a little later in the day, well, you get the idea, Dave came, picked it up, took it home, took to Union Square, ran an errand, and brought it back in an hour and a half. A little later on, Naomi came by, rode it down to the Mission, where she dropped it off, took her 15 minutes, and then a couple more of our users used it for round trips from the Mission that evening, up to Nob Hill, down to Bernal. Over the course of the day, Scoot 47 covered about 18 miles, and it was used by 5 different people. It earned about $16 plus monthly membership fees. Some of these rides are free because our users have something kind of like a Muni Pass. They pay us for the month, and the first hour of all their rides are free. So they were able to bop around San Francisco at about the same speed of a taxi, but for not much more than they would have paid to ride the bus both ways. So we're offering something that we think is a great complement to all of these other great modes of transportation in San Francisco, like Zipcar and transit and bike share and all the things that people are using to get around. And our users love it. So we're new. We launched in the fall, and we're up to 12 locations, 35 scooters in San Francisco, and we hope that next time you're up in the field,
Conversation altogether, I'd like to invite Kent Dixon to the stage of Unify Things. Kent's going to, I'll let you introduce yourself and then take it away with these guys.
Sure.
So, Kent Dixon, former CTO of Tendril, worked on a cloud platform for connected devices, got really interested in mobility and vehicles in some of those use cases. So it's a pleasure to be here with this group of gentlemen today to discuss connected vehicle. And as you can see, the definition of connected vehicle is pretty broad. I mean, very vastly different use cases and types of companies here. And some really intelligent guys, so I think we'll have a great discussion. So I'm going to start with a few questions and kind of throw it out and let you guys respond to it in whichever order that you want to, and if you want to, for some of these questions. But let's start with the topic of population growth. So obviously this is an issue for the planet and for the world, for cities, for countries, I think that the Internet of Things, and particularly mobility and vehicles, have a role to play in how we sort of deal with some of the challenges of population growth. So, analysts, how do you feel about population growth, and how do you think some of these technologies are going to help us address it?
I can take that. So if we're going to move from 7 billion people around the world to 9 billion, a lot is going to change, not just the auto industry. From our perspective, just looking at things at NightScope, you can't scale law enforcement and security in the manner that we're dealing with today using the same kinds of technology. Similarly, for the auto industry, having to deal with these huge megacities around the world that are only going to get larger and larger, and more of them, there's probably 24 now, how you design a vehicle, to what specifications and what regulations is going to also dramatically change that industry. So I just don't think we can keep doing what we're doing. It's just not scalable.
Right. I think my mic's working now. Thank you. Jay, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting subject, especially as we're here to talk about the Internet of Things, because we have 7 billion people today. We have, by 2015, over 3 billion people will have a smartphone. And a smartphone is going to connect us to our physical environment in a way that I think many people weren't imagining when they bought a phone, let alone a smartphone, including our cars and our homes and eventually our self-driving cars and our physical environment in all sorts of interesting ways. But we're also going to peak at 9 billion people, according to all the experts out there. And when we do peak at 9 billion people, what's going to happen to the economic system that's designed to support constant population growth? I've been reading a book recently by the X Prize Foundation founder about the Internet of Things and about water and about healthcare and a lot of things. Access to water dramatically changes access to education, which dramatically changes access to food, which will cause developing countries to slow down in their infant mortality rates and in the number of babies they're having very rapidly. So, and access to water comes from access to information. So when we're able to now look at the quality of water, and people can make much more intelligent decisions at virtually a fraction of a penny, which is technologies coming in healthcare with the Internet of Things, people will be able to make better choices around the kind of water that's available, and they won't spend 4 hours getting it. So does that have anything to do with cars or Mojio at the moment? No, not necessarily, but it's really all part and parcel to the Internet of Things, which is all about access to information.
I'll throw in a particular take on this. The part of population that we're interested in at Scoot is urban population growth. And in the US, we actually are seeing, for the first time in a long time, growth in our cities, which is subtle relative to the kind of urban growth that's happening in a lot of other parts of the world. But we look at cities as, from just as environmentalists, like the only really sustainable form of settlement in a 9 billion person world. So we don't really get to all live in suburbs and get to keep being, sort of prosperous, coexisting people. The other side, which is a little more practical, is we see cities as the kind of microprocessors of the global economy, and what we're doing at Scoot is we're making them run faster and more efficiently, and we're putting in a mode of transportation that's really specific to the city: crowded streets, dense places, scarce parking, and on-demand services that are used by urbanites who don't want to spend $1,000 a month to pay for, insure, park, maintain, and fuel an automobile. And so we're looking, our sort of wedge market is millennials, who are people in their late teens to early 30s, roughly, many of whom are living in cities, staying in cities even after they have kids, and they're not as interested in moving out to the suburbs and getting their dream car and their dream home. They want to live in their dream neighborhood and have access to all this stuff. And so we're one of those things that they want to have access to, and it allows them to accelerate their life in the city and be faster, save money. And there's an environmental dimension to it too. We're electric vehicles, and we think that speaks to the values of a lot of the people that are using our service.
That's actually a great point when you bring it down to an applicable way with the urban living. in San Francisco is just a great example. Obviously, it's just up the street from here. 30% of driving traffic every day is people looking for a parking spot. Right? And it's unbelievable. So you could cut 1 out of every 3 cars off the road if we could automate parking. So, there's APIs for that. Municipalities have APIs for the parking meters, so you could connect to those. And actually, one of our use cases at Mojio is absolutely to enable an automated parking experience where the parking reservation is made before you even leave your house. And by the time you get there, it's waiting, and it just gets automated on your credit card. It's time and date stamps and location stamps your car, and as you roll out, it completes that parking payment. So certainly, as we get into more and more density and densification of urban living, more people are moving into the bigger cities, and they're just going to keep growing. So we do need the Internet of Things to ease that congestion in every way. And I'm not even a fan of cars. I don't even like cars. But it's just such an incredible opportunity to bring them into the 21st century.
So when you talk about legislation and this disruption that we're going through, what's your take on the current state of legislation, whether it's federal, state, or municipal, and how's that affecting your cause? Helping perhaps or hindering?
We can't even balance a budget, and you want to ask me about regulations? I mean, it's not going to catch up in time. That's what I fear. If I focus on autonomous technology, I think there's 3 kind of big brick walls that the automakers and what Google's doing, I think, is awesome. And we need a catalyst instigator to do that. But if you sit back and look at the regulatory requirements, both from the federal authorities and the state authorities, to figure out what happens and how you register an autonomous vehicle, a self-driving vehicle, out on public roads, this is going to be an ongoing debate for at least a decade or 2. First problem. Second problem is I'm an ex-Ford Motor Company executive. I've kind of been there and understand the psyche. There is a lot of great auto companies trying to look at incremental improvements, but I don't believe, just as you're looking at targeting the millennials because they have a certain profile of thinking and how they act, I believe this generation of senior auto executives are not, it's not in their DNA, they're not programmed to go do something as revolutionary as autonomous technology. And then the last bit is going to be the lawyers. The product liability guys are, the Office of General Counsel is going to walk in and go, you're going to have what vehicle going through Times Square at 5 o'clock and putting our $100 billion brand at risk? Not going to happen. And so that's why we're looking to try to be part of that catalyst to find a different way to commercialize the technology. And back to your regulatory side of things, it's already very difficult. To get a new vehicle out the door, let's put between $800 million and $1.6 billion, take you 3 or 4 years, and even though you've been in business for 100 years, you're still going to screw it up. And it's very, very hard. Some of it's self-imposed from consumer demands, but a lot of it, why do a lot of vehicles look the way they do? Well, if someone tells you the bumper needs to be here, the lights need to be here, the head has to be here, you can have this radius on these knobs, well, you're not going to have a lot of degrees of freedom. If you pass a legislation that says, okay, autonomous and self-driving vehicles are now legal on public roads, do I really need bumpers? Do I really need that side impact beam? Do I really need to do that airbag? There's all sorts of stuff you don't need. And that bases it, is basically the, reboot the entire industry. And that's the very exciting part that going to tie into your previous question on urbanization, on the deployment of technology.
Yeah, I heard a question earlier about insurance and what happens when people are
their data is being demanded by insurance companies and all of that. And I'd like to address your question in just a second on the subject of legislation. So as far as your car computer data goes, so there's on average about 20 gigabytes of data being produced per hour in the average car. And it's unbelievable. 150 you can attest to this. 150 sensors, 20,000 open codes, probably 30,000 more codes. The average modern car has more lines of code than a Boeing 747. People just don't realize the amount of intelligence and computerization that goes into cars. And yet that data is not available to the average person. And if the mechanic can pull up, when you get a little light that says check engine, the mechanic can plug a device into your car and see on your radio reader exactly what's wrong. So that the car maker can make that data available to you too, but they don't. And it's all about part sales and all those kinds of things, and because that's where the margins are.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I know. I bet you didn't ever heard that before. As far as legislation goes, for what we do, making that data available to you through apps on your phone that developers can write apps for. There's an open standard that's been around since 1996 called OBD2, and it's going more and more open. And there's a lot of open data initiatives at the Department of Energy and Department of Transportation that are slowly facilitating this. So the legislation today makes it possible for you to have that data if the technology was made available, which is really what we do at Mogio. Now there's also a movement at the White House for a black box in your car, and a black box that's data tracker for a black box for a data tracker that will collect data on what happened at the scene of an accident. And then, of course, that data being mandated when there's people fighting in court and all those kinds of things. We're going to flip that on the industry's head. We're going to make it so that your points that you get from safe driving benefit you with discounts on apps, discounts on coffees, discounts on services and tune-ups, and discounts on insurance. So not is it that you are going to be mandated and forced to show your driving data when you get into an accident, but you'll have the right to shop that data around to get the best rates with your insurance companies. And so what happens when all of this data is available and there's somebody who says, well, I'm not going to participate, I don't want my data to be available? Those, unfortunately, I'm going to use the word laggers, are going to be left out of a world where we are, as a people, going to be required to make our data, to collect our data and make it more available in a way that ultimately the industry wants. It's going to make driving safer. It's going to reduce the number of car accidents. It's going to reduce the number of insurance claims by a huge margin, which will, of course, make your insurance payments lower. But is this something you want? Are we comfortable with this? Should we be freely giving away our data? Our policy is that every data exchange on the Mojo cloud is one of control, and one of value, and one of transparency. So we give complete control through the app for you to see exactly who you've given access to your data. We give value, which means you don't give that information to the insurance company unless they provide you a deep discount. And then we provide transparency so that you can see all of it and decide when you want to turn that data to that partner on or off. So if you don't want your data to go to the service garage, just go into our app and just turn it off.
Interesting. That's a really, I think, important topic that we've talked about a little bit, I think, here today already, which is the data that's being collected about you or about your vehicle or about your location. How do you control that? How do you grant rights to it and delegate that? I think it's really important. I think there aren't standards around that yet. So Jay, that was a really good comment on this topic. I'm wondering if Michael or Bill have thoughts about the transparency of the data. Perhaps with Scoot, you don't collect nearly as much data. You have a lot of data about your vehicles, which are actually your vehicles. They're not owned by the populace. But are there data transparency issues that you see, or openness issues that are important to you guys?
Not too much. We are, I think what's useful about it. So when we think about data, mostly what we're thinking about are people are asking us for our data. So sometimes the local planners want to know how many scooters are you going to have, and when they're not riding a scooter, what are they using, and how is this going to affect our overall transportation planning? And developers want the data. So we've some folks have managed to write little apps that plug into our system and text them when a scooter becomes available, or they I've done other kind of interesting things with it. But we're not we're a transportation service, and we're really focused on making the vehicles available to folks when they need them, where they need them, and at a really, 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 really affordable price. So that is so data for us is mostly about running our system better, and then and making sure that we're integrating well with the developer community and other folks who are engaged with us.
I believe every battle is won or lost before you even fight it. And if the battle that you want to pick is us versus them, meaning us versus the machines or us versus the people that have the data, you will lose. The way to get this to work is actually have these machines and these robots and these apps all have a very strong level of transparency and inclusion. Some people have looked at our product and said, wow, that looks like either R2-D2 sponsored this or the Jetsons or what have you. But the technology is mature enough to go ahead and do this. The key thing is to involve the community, actually make it part of the community. The concept of private social networks are already out there. If that device can actually create value, add value to the local community, to the parents, to the faculty at a school, to law enforcement, to a tech company, and that data can also be shared and viewed by the general public or the customer using it, it's a win-win-win, because you're going to be able to create some value for society, you're going to create some value for the customer, and then obviously we're looking to create a massive amount of value for our investors.
Good. So related to something that we've been talking about here, I think both Michael and Jay mentioned the developer community specifically. It seems that we see often in the Internet of Things that it's very stovepipey, right? A manufacturer is bringing a device to market that also has a companion web app that you run on your smartphone or on your tablet, and that's their view of the world, their user experience, but it's a very closed sort of stovepipe. So what's your perspective on APIs and open ecosystems as a way to hopefully make the pie bigger?
I'd like to have some fun with it. In a private setting a couple months ago, I mentioned to a few developers and hackers, I said, okay, when we get the first one built here, we're just going to have a hackathon and have you guys have at it and open it up. And the response was basically, okay, what time, what date, where can we do this? And I think the developer community globally has grown and matured to a point that, crowdsourcing a little bit of development work is actually very, very beneficial, not only to get traction into the marketplace, but actually to make the product that much better.
Yeah, on the subject of the connected car, and I would love to get your perspective on this as well, so chime right in. Yes, you can go get OnStar with your GM or your Cadillac, and you can go get the Mercedes Embrace, and there's a lot of great proprietary platforms with the connected car, all of which are open but closed. So there's new open APIs for next year's Fords and next year's GMs, and people can write apps for a handful of models coming out to market. They're open in that sense, but they're closed in the sense that they're caught inside of that silo, so stovepipey. You don't have the freedom if your wife has a Volkswagen and you have a Ford. How are you going to have your app experience move with you? More importantly, maybe from the developer perspective, which is 8 million strong worldwide now, if you're a developer, are you going to write an app for this car or that car? I kind of want to write an app for cars. I don't want to write an app for a car. So how do you get access to a marketplace that's as big as the car industry is? And I think that's where there's a strong need for a ubiquitous platform.
You don't. You're not. The way the auto industry is set up right now, the brands are extremely important. The technical, just going through the development and testing cycle with prototypes is very unique for each vehicle. And, I think it's a miracle that even the brand managers have allowed dealers to have dual brands from different automakers right next to each other. That's about as close as you're going to get. Because the next level is, I believe, again, when autonomous technology takes over, that is the point in time where you're going to get that API. But until then, it's stovepipes galore. It is very siloed, and it will remain siloed till the business model fails or begins to fail, or has frankly already begun to fail?
Right, and so I guess the question is open versus closed, and which future is coming. I think I've seen already a tipping point where there are more open software platforms than there are closed ones now, and obviously with so many people who are driving for that, I think it's a kind of an inevitability, and it's just a matter of time. So today, yes, with Mojio, you can write an app for absolutely any car after 1995, and RSDK will be presented this afternoon at the demo pit. And the user, the driver, the owner has the freedom to take a little device and circumvent that OEM siloed perspective, so to speak, which, by championing the consumer, giving them what they want, which is an open, connected car experience to their entire environment, we can become millions of users strong. And with that, in very much the way SiriusXM started off as an aftermarket piece of hardware, and now it's integrated into just about any car you buy. And the next step is, of course, more openness and more freedom to develop and collaborate.
Michael, you mentioned one of the use cases for sort of openness and how developers are adding interesting things for your network of vehicles, and I found that really interesting. There seem like in any of these things, if you open them, things will be created that you probably didn't anticipate. I can imagine some really interesting things around tying in with a calendar or something like that. It says, oh, I have an appointment across town in the Mission, and I have to be there in 5 minutes, and an app or your phone notifies you that there happens to be a scoot 2 blocks away, and it's available right now, and your drive time, given traffic, is 5 minutes. So I can imagine that this, in fact, does enhance the user experience and hopefully the willingness of the audience to actually use the product.
Yeah, I think conceivably it could, and I think probably the use case that's interesting for us, which we haven't really seen done really well, but tons and tons and tons of people are talking about it in the kind of urban transportation world, transit world, biking world, is some sort of an app which pulls all these modes of transportation together. Because we saw our customer as someone that we call the transportation omnivore, who is a non-driver who lives in a city and mixes and matches modes of transportation to get where they need to go. And because if you own a car, you basically just drive everywhere, even if you live in the city. But if you don't own a car like me, I use Zipcar maybe once a month, and then I ride the bus, I ride my scooter, I take a bike, I walk, I grab a taxi or a Lyft or a sidecar or something like that. And so that mixing and matching of all those different modes is it's what we consider to be like a healthy transportation ecosystem. It's how we target markets, and and we believe that integrating well with other urban transportation modes is a really big opportunity, because when we think about like substitutes and competition, it's pretty much all about complements unless you're a driver, in which case you're probably not going to be. I mean, probably about half of our customers own a car, but half of them don't, which is a pretty high percentage. And we're interested in making that collection of alternative modes of transportation powerful enough collectively to be a really adequate substitute for owning an automobile in the city. So we are interested in those apps, and we've already started working with one that kind of puts Scoot next to the bus schedule and next to Zipcar availability, and will hail an Uber for you, and kind of pulls it all together into one kind of coherent urban transportation experience. And I think that there's interesting potential there. We haven't seen it done like brilliantly, but it'll happen.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a good one. So I think you all may have some good perspective on the legacy industry here around transportation. Bill, you've been a part of it. Jay, you've been sort of adjacent to it, and I think Michael, even you're starting to engage with manufacturers of scooters and things like that. And so I think there's a really interesting thing happening there around the technology that's on board the vehicle. And it was funny, just last week I got invited by General Motors to participate in a survey. And all the questions in the survey were about what features do you really want in your car? And these features were like, do I want a Wi-Fi hotspot? Do I want navigation? Do I want an onboard entertainment system? Do I want emergency services? And it got me thinking about, are these things even relevant to have embedded in a vehicle anymore, when they can actually be, your phone or your iPad or a thing that you just plug into your car. So what's your perspective on this? It seems like the traditional manufacturers still want to sort of gild the lily, add more features, add more options onto it, but is that just going to evaporate before their eyes, or is there still a place for that?
For as dismal as a point of view I give in on the auto industry, they need to be applauded for wanting to try. Almost every major automaker has a Silicon Valley office, so first really good step. The one thing I would strongly caution, especially if there are any startups here wanting to work in the auto industry, that might be a natural place to go vet your idea, think you're going to be able to get them to include it in their next release of whatever vehicle. That is a big black hole. And it's not because the automakers are not looking for the latest technology. They actually are. They're very scared. Everyone's looking at the same data right now going, something's going to give, something's got to change. So the management knows that they need to change, that they need to embrace the technology community, especially here in Silicon Valley. But my strong advice would be to focus on the tier one huge suppliers that support the auto industry to get your technology or your app genuinely reviewed. And actually, this might go to your thought process, Jay.
The tier ones being the Delphis. And
the tier ones being a 10, 20, 25, $30 billion company that provides seats, that provides instrument panels, that provides, in some cases, engines and exhausts and what have you. The Denzos, the JCIs, the Lears, the Magna Steyrs. These companies have a strong motivation to come up with the latest technology and go shop it. And actually, one way to get your idea across a number of automakers is actually to work with a tier one supplier as opposed to a single automaker, because they're actually selling to almost every automaker out there. And obviously there's these little cliques in Korea, and there's a clique in Japan, there's a clique in Detroit and in Germany. But they are looking for the best and brightest. They have seen a dramatic change. But just to give you a little playing field as to how long it might take you to get a widget into their vehicle, how long did it take Microsoft and Apple to be able to have the credibility to stand eye to eye and get something in one or two or a handful of the automakers? That's the level that you're looking at. And so, again, my strong advice would be to focus on the tier one suppliers or even tier two suppliers that can help you really get in the door. But, you know, change is afoot.
Yeah. So, I mean, should we view the vehicles themselves? I mean, they're going to be manufactured. Maybe not the autonomous vehicles. There's opportunity for upstarts to come in and do some things. But a lot of Ford and BMW and Volkswagen probably aren't going to go away soon. The makers of scooters, however many there are, they're not going to go away soon. But should we be viewing these things more as sort of platforms in which consumers then layer their aftermarket thing, their iPads, their iPhones, their navigation systems, their monitoring devices into them? Do they really just become a bus in the terms of more like a computer bus where you plug other things into, or are they going to be this sort of integrated thing, which I think they envision themselves as today?
I'd love to do a real quick survey. How many people use the embedded navigation of their car versus the one on their phone? So let's hands up for embedded navigation in the car. Yeah, how about on the phone? There you go. So it seems inevitable to me. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody had a smartphone. Now, hundreds of millions of people have smartphones, and they're going to be $99 next year in Europe and UK and in the US. So which means everybody will have access to a smartphone. And if you've got a GPS system that you have to go and get a CD and plug it in, and if you don't remember where you put that CD when you bought the car 3 years ago, good luck updating your GPS. And yes, GPS will be a self-updatable thing in a few more years in all the cars coming out to market if you can afford a car above the average person's price.
But you already have the most powerful mapping system in the world in your pocket, and it's totally free. And that's just maps. I mean, look at all the free internet radio, and on and on and on it goes, all the things you can get from apps these days. So
We did the same thing. We looked at some of the big car companies and the way they were trying to develop these proprietary interfaces to tweet at you while you're driving or something, and they're all stressing because young people aren't buying cars and they're buying smartphones, and they're or decreasingly buying cars, and they're sharing cars and things like that, and so they are looking at becoming dumb hardware, and some of the dumber ideas have been trying to make the car more like a smartphone, but you really can't. We didn't use our own proprietary interface. We figured everyone would have a smartphone, and there's no way we are ever going to develop anything that looks even remotely current when the next Apple product comes out. So we figured you already have an Apple product or a sweet Android product, and you're going to put that in your scooter, and it's going to look just that much better, and we're going to have the advantage of all of that technology that we're just going to build on top of our scooter. So we put a bunch of kind of proprietary electronics in the scooter, but we left the user interface, we have all kinds of network connections, GPSs, all that stuff is just in your phone. And I think the smarter car companies, what we see happening is it seems like they may, particularly the Europeans, are beginning maybe to have the conversation that IBM had in the 90s when they said, it's time to become a services organization. And so Volkswagen just bought a big car sharing company. BMW has Drive now. Daimler has Car2Go, which is hugely successful. And a bunch of the Renault, Citroën, they all have a services arm that's doing some kind of vehicle sharing, and it's I think that's the trend to watch. So that's, I guess, right back to your specific question. I think that the main thing is it's actually you're not going to be getting this stuff from the car. You're probably also not going to be adding it yourself so much as you're going to be sharing a vehicle, and then you're going to be bringing most of these services with you in your pocket.
I'd like to get a little bit more granular. So 3 buckets. So if you're developing technology that's software-driven and doesn't really require too much interaction with the vehicle itself and more with the person, go as fast as you can. If you're developing software that needs to be wholly integrated and tested with internally with the automaker's vehicle, tread carefully. On one side, they're shortish software engineers, and software is key for vehicles these days. But getting it through the system and out the door while your investors are asking you, did you hit the revenue button yet, is problematic. If you're looking to do a hardware device and try to get it integrated into the vehicle, don't even try. You're going to end up in the $30 billion aftermarket kind of marketplace that's really, really fragmented. I mean, this is where all the aftermarket wheels and exhaust guys are, and you might have a company $5-10 million at max, but it's really fragmented and very, very difficult.
Good. Well, I see that we have just a few minutes left in the panel, so I wanted to call for questions. I totally agree. I think it's a great discussion broadly about the Internet of Things, because as has been mentioned, the Internet of Things is all about data. These are sensors that are measuring and recording data that's going on in our device or our home or our car or our scooter or in our pocket. And if the data is being created, this is my opinion, if the data is being created by a device or a vehicle or something that you bought and paid for, then that is your data. And so Jay's description of the diagnostic systems in cars being sort of locked up and only dealers could get access to it and then charge you a premium for telling you what's wrong with your car, when theoretically your car should have been able to tell you that if it would have been open enough for that, I think is morally a terrible thing. And so I think that's a thing that we really need to demand of the manufacturers of the devices that we buy, is that we have rights to that data and we have rights to delegate who gets access to that data and for what purpose. Right, exactly. Right.
Well, I would certainly love to tell you how much your data is worth, and because for our own business, we'd love to know. It's extremely so, and data is a funny word. I mean, we're taking raw data, what's called PIDs and OBD codes, and we're putting that up to our cloud. We're interpreting that data, and we're running algorithms on it, and we're getting gallons per mile out of air manifold pressure from your car. And we're taking gallons per mile and making that data available, what I would now call information, available to a developer to write an app that also uses GPS from your Mojo device, which you own, it's your data, and taking that information to develop a mileage tracker. So you're getting value in terms of a free mileage tracker, for one. For two, when an insurance company wants to look at your driving score that you've created, that you own on the Mojo platform, and wants to offer you an insurance discount to look at how hard you brake and how hard you steer and determine you're safe, how well you drive, you're going to say yes, no, or learn more, which that's the transparency part. And the value part comes in you knowing that you're going to get a 20 or 30 or 40% discount. The control part comes when you have an interface in whatever product you're using that allows you to turn it off at any time. So how much is that data worth? Is it worth $300 a year in insurance savings for you? Probably. You know, there's very good showing of that from Progressive and other insurance companies. How much is that? How much is the raw data that's streaming off your car worth? It has to be applied. So it's all about applied data in a way that translates into value from an ecosystem or from a community of organizations interfacing in a way to do business with consumers. And I think it's just all about, it's just not like Facebook. It's the opposite of that. It's got to be all about transparency and control by the end user.
I can complicate your question by adding a time horizon, right? What is it worth to me this 3, 6, 9, 12 months on an insurance policy? Or I met a forensics expert who's gone through 250 cases and said, you know, you're going to have a spike in sales on your autonomous data machine on a particular day. And I said, okay, what day is that? The day you solve or prevent a crime that otherwise would not have been able to be done for your technology, right? What is that worth to you or to the community? Or if a terror alert happens and we're able to stop something awful happening, what's that worth? I don't even know where to begin. But I think the first premise or the first principle I think you're hearing from the panel here is, you know, transparency, and, you know, try to do something good with what data you do have, and we're going to find out. I mean, this is not something you're going to answer today or tomorrow.
Companies that make their how they use people's information transparent and they give people control, overall, I think people are going to choose. So, you know, this may not be a great example, but a lot of people are leaving Facebook and going back to MySpace now. It's just, some people are tired of the you know, the way Facebook has been, you know, constantly updating your privacy policy and then resetting things. That's sort of stopped about a year ago, but you know, people are going to eventually choose where they feel more comfortable doing business.
Other questions from the audience? All right. Seeing none, I'd like to thank Bill, Jay, and Michael for being here today and talking about some of these issues. Great conversation. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I mean it this time. It's going to be a short break, but we're going to start promptly at the bottom of the hour. So please enjoy a beverage, the restrooms, the demo stations, but we're going to start promptly at 1/2 past the hour. Finish up today a great conversation. Thank you.